Roll call. So is Danielle Bailey here?
I am.
Ben Wynn is here. And so is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. So let's go to 2A.
So just an update on the planning for Black History Month activities. I have a note. Mr. Birmingham is here, so thank you for joining us, Mike. And then I have a note from Parkway that I was just going to share. So Dr. Smith wanted me to share the following. Parkway is creating a school-wide slideshow that will celebrate African Americans and their contributions to society. Within their slideshow, students will showcase their creativity and originality through a variety of platforms and themes like cultural arts, language arts, and social justice. Weekly TikTok videos will also feature African-American adults and children, both highlighting and emphasizing wonderful contributions in the areas of sports, film, science, etc. Classroom teachers also have access to resources such as an online library and classroom projects that they can both review and complete with students. This information will be shared with Parkway families through a link embedded in the Family Panther Press newsletter in mid to late February. So that is from Parkway from Dr. Smith. And then I will let Mr. Birmingham take it away to update on the Glen Hills planning.
Hey, thank you. Good evening, everybody. I do have the pleasure to just give you a quick overview of what Glen Hills Middle School will be doing in celebration of Black History Month. The Black History Month committee met last week with a team of about 15 staff members. This year's theme will be celebrating Black voices, past, present, and future. We will have a Black History Month Black History program, which will be Friday, February 25th. It will be pre-recorded for students and the Glendale community to watch. The program will include presentations from all middle school grade levels, plus performances from our jazz ensemble and our orchestra. In addition to the Black History program, we're also going to have Black History daily announcements throughout the month of February, which will be featuring local people of color and their accomplishments. Ms. Young has also shared a document with staff, which includes a variety of various activities that teachers can implement throughout the month of February. And then finally, we hope to have Spirit Days that will be centered around Black History Month, wearing Black History colors and t-shirts and the like. And so that's kind of the overview of what we're doing at Glen Hills Middle School.
Thanks for sharing that. Sorry, my Hari is trying to get in on this meeting, my son, but I'm so excited for the program because it was great, and I look forward to when we can have it in person again sometime. But I had a couple questions sort of around organization and like sustainability of, you know, doing Black History Month events and celebrations in our district. And okay, child. And so I was wondering, like, this committee of 15 people, I'm so glad that it sounds like that's a large group of people, because I've shared this concern with Allison that my understanding historically is that the organizing and planning of this event has often fallen on a few of our, you know, staff members of color, and that's obviously not what we want to have happen in our district. So I was wondering how the committee was selected. Was the opportunity put out there and folks volunteered, or do you know more about that, Mike or Allison?
Yes. So for us, it was pretty easy, exactly what you said. I sent out an email to the staff saying anyone that wanted to be part of the Black History Month Planning Committee to join us in a Zoom meeting, and then they just showed up. So yeah.
Okay, that's great. Mm-hmm. That's good to hear. I guess I like want to plant a seed for thought for future celebrations, and thinking about how we sort of fund activities or fund this committee or organizers of this committee, whether it is a stipend, whether it is funding for a committee to do things like buy outfits for the drummers, or instruments, or decorate the buildings or things like that, to think about sort of the sustainability of this and making sure that, we give it the import it deserves, and also that the burden is sort of not felt by the folks who are standing up to organize this. So that's all I wanted to say, but I look forward.
Danielle, that's great insight. And Allison, did you want to speak to that? Because we had a quick conversation about that.
Oh, great.
Okay,
You're on the
remind
spot
me.
now.
Yes, I know. Remind me of the conversation.
So we were at our meeting, I mentioned to Allison and Lindsay, could we actually set aside a fund for Black History and a budget? And Allison said, yeah, so my plan is to sit down with Lindsay and see if this could be we would have an actual annual budget that we could allocate funds to, maybe even bringing in people for the program.
Yeah.
And the such. So, yeah.
Great. I love to hear.
Lindsay's been working with lots of departments on just kind of map out what your needs are so that she has that information, like the music department or special celebrations like this, and just get her that information so that she can just plan for that every single year.
Okay, great. Well, I would
Great
imagine this
questions.
doesn't fall under a specific department though, right? It's just sort of, I know Mr. Birmingham, you've organized for a long time, right? I believe, and I know High Day does a lot of work over at Parkway as well as other staff members. So yeah. Just wanted to highlight that. And cool.
We're excited.
Good, me too.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for coming.
It's great to hear from you.
Good to see you, Ben.
Yep. 7th grade science teacher. All right. So is that it?
Yep, on that
Okay.
topic, yes.
So 2B.
So I'll just hand that over to Ms. Westfall.
Can I share my screen? All right.
All right, you should now be
So-
a co-host. You got it.
Thank you. So I just did a quick little slideshow just to give a brief update and then ask the committee here, whoops, for feedback. I don't know what's happening. Too many windows. Hold on.
Little insight into your day and your brain.
In my world. No. Okay, here we go. All right, so I wanted to talk a little bit about the work that we've been doing around gifted and talented. We've really been digging into the audit, working with CISA 1 consultant. I talked about this at the last school board meeting. One of our big steps is kind of establishing the vision for gifted and talented. So I kind of wanted to go through our process and then also share some of the drafts that we currently have and then ask for feedback around that. So just really talking a little bit about the why. Why do we want an instructional vision? Why is it important? It really communicates expectations for teaching and learning. It serves as a shared language and a decision-making framework, and also ties into time and money across all levels of the system. It provides a common space for dialogue about what effective instruction looks like, and then ways that we can compare the vision to what's actually happening in practice. And really just having a strong instructional vision makes the selection of materials easier and really guarantees that our students are growing. This is our current vision. I'll let you read it. So it's definitely a little outdated and needs to be changed. Oops, it's not letting me change here. So part of our process was really kind of having a discussion around, strong vision statements should have, right? And here are some of the things that our CISA 1 consultant shared with us. She walked us through the vision work together as a team. I'm really focusing on student experience and details of what it's going to look like in action, aligning it with state standards, preparing students for college and career readiness, and then including instructional implications. So this is kind of the process we're going to follow. We are through the first section of it, and with the star, that's kind of where we're at right now within the process. So the team got together and reviewed some samples of different GNT vision statements from all different districts. We kind of used those four, what should a good vision statement have. We used those pieces to kind of review those and see kind of where they were falling off or where their real positives were, to help kind of set our mindset of creating a vision. Then we used those priorities and started working on a Jamboard, and all of us working kind of separately, adding, our thinking to the Jamboard, just kind of sharing input on the vision statement. Then she took all those pieces of input and synthesized them together into 3 drafts. And then the statements that I'm sharing with you tonight, and that were shared in the agenda, are the 3 drafts that we came out with. And we also sent a survey out to staff asking them what their preference of draft was, and then what feedback they have around it. We also did the same thing with the administrative team. And we're doing that now with this committee as well. So that's kind of where we are sitting with that. Once all this feedback is collected and the preferences are collected, we're going to share it all back with the CISA 1 consultant, and she will create a final draft. Once the final draft is completed, then we'll be sharing that with all stakeholders.
Jenica, who is the first group? You said admin and this committee. Who was the first group you shared the draft with?
The first group was admin. The second group was the staff.
Staff. All staff?
All staff.
Okay.
So I have them up here, but you should also have it in your packet. But this is the first draft. So those of you who are on it, I'm going to just leave it on the screen for a minute. We don't have the packet. The second
It's
draft.
also in board docs. It's in the information portion.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Anyone can see it on board docs.
Because you're not going to remember all 3 on the slides. And draft 3. There's a lot of similarities among them, but then there are some differences, and definitely receive some really good feedback around them. And so I'm now going to ask this group for your feedback around these.
Yeah, I think keeping it shorter is probably better to keep it more focused. Because if it gets too long, then we kind of go in all different directions. So shorter, simpler, then we have a direction we're going in. Also, I mean, I see words in there that they're kind of broad. So like critically think about what. And so if it's possible, maybe something a little bit more specific about what is actually being done in the gifted and talented program. I don't know. Is this going to be a separate class, or is this going to be after school, or what is this going to look like?
This is for our gifted and talented, like the whole system for the district. So when we think about that, so it's not necessarily a specific class, it's how GNT is throughout the system.
And I think some of the pieces that you're thinking about, Ben, would come next. So like once a vision is agreed upon, then there would be some of those action steps, right? Like these are the things we like, your mission, right? That comes underneath that. So that'd be more detailed. Yeah.
Okay. But what does the system look like then? Or what's it going to look like?
So it's kind of like when you say, if we're talking about a vision for, let's say, special education, and we say as a system, we believe in inclusive practices. We believe in access to the curriculum for all students. We believe, you know what I mean? It's just that big, like what we believe as a district.
The
And
work
then
now
from
is
those beliefs, then we plan the specifics of how we're going to implement it. So this is just sort of the bigger, like this is what we believe about, talent development. and advanced learners.
Yeah, okay. But but gifted and talented right now, from my understanding, they're not meeting separately. It's after school or something.
So the pieces that you're talking about are more strategies, and this is just
Okay.
like, this is what we believe. We believe these kids have to think critically. We believe these kids will have leadership skills in lots of different areas. It's kind of like the big picture piece.
Yeah.
So what you're looking for will be like probably at the February board meeting when we start talking about the schedule and the structure of the day, which is a little bit, you know what I mean, more nuts and bolts.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So I
Well,
still,
we'll get there, Ben. We'll get
all
there.
right. I still think keeping it shorter, simpler,
Yeah,
is
agreed.
going to be, it's going to help us stay more focused.
Agreed.
So the caveat for me is that I have just recently sort of reviewed this, so I'm still processing as well. And I also started trying to do my own research and looking at other gifted and talented and advanced learning vision statements to try to understand where some, like, I get the sentiment. I think what part of Ben's question may hinge on the fact that, like, this doesn't mention gifted and talented advanced learners or anything. So to me, these could be vision statements for an overall school or curriculum or anything. And I think I understand why it's maybe so open and trying to address an entire population. But I would say to even, I would like a little more specificity. Like, this makes me think that there is no gifted and talented program, and that perhaps it's all going to trickle down through every component of learning, which may be what you're thinking, but I'm not sure. And so I feel like if we are keeping that component of advanced learning for those particular learners, that it might make sense to call that out in this statement, because that's what this statement is possibly addressing or supposed to address. The other thing that I saw in other statements that kind of spoke to me was a very direct acknowledgement of accessing all populations and equity sort of, and diverse populations. I think that's where this is trying to go, but I would say be bolder and be bold and say, you know, this, we will touch upon all populations, SPED or diversity or whatever it is. I get that I like how it talks about social emotional, and I like how it talks about all students' strengths and all having access to. I just wonder if there's space to carve out what it is we're doing for, like, advanced learners, and not like our old mission statement, like superior, whatever.
Right.
A lot of people.
Is it helpful to imagine this as like the first page of the entire handbook? Because basically there's going to be an entire handbook. It's going to be really obvious that this isn't a handbook for advanced learners. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then this will just be like that opening, you know what I mean, statement. So it'll be obvious that that's who we're talking about. You know what I mean?
That was some of my, like, I imagine the handbook will define the population that advanced learning or whatever it is meant to address, who those folks are and what areas, right? Different areas, different avenues of advancement, I imagine. So I'll wait.
Right.
I'll wait.
It'll talk about, it'll talk about all the different types of GT, how you qualify, criteria.
Yes.
All of those pieces are all a part of the handbook.
So that's what I figured. I guess I still, my feedback is
structure,
just
all of it.
I feel like in an effort to be like sort of all encompassing, I don't know. Again, I'm still processing, so maybe I can share with you some of the lines from other statements that sort of made it clear to me what this was referencing, and yet still said, with a focus on reaching all populations and giving all students access to these higher opportunities, but at the same time sort of carving out that space for advanced learning, I guess, if that makes any sense. That was sort of, and the other, I guess, I know that we're not there yet either in terms of structure and strategy, but I do like some of these mission statements I see that sort of get at that a little bit more. I don't know.
And there's definitely a difference between the vision statement and the mission statement.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, I guess I would say that's as far as I've gotten in sort of processing my feedback, but if you don't mind me sort of sending you a couple of things to kind of illustrate what was maybe motivating that, I'd be happy to sort of send you some of those, and just so you can see what I was, if that makes sense. Okay. Yeah, because I mean, I think they all sound great. in terms of objectives. I wouldn't say don't do any of that.
Right.
If we had to pick one, I would say number 3.
Interesting.
If we had, I'm curious about your feedback. I'm curious how you guys.
And why would you pick number
Order
3?
is simpler and it's more direct. So, you're not going to go in all these different directions.
But it doesn't, I don't know.
You know what's interesting?
I'm not saying it's
too?
perfect. I'm just saying that if we had to pick one of the 3,
Yeah,
that's what I would go with.
No, that's good. That's good feedback to have because, like each of us on the administrative team kind of did the same thing as you, Ben. We were like, oh, I prefer this one because of blah, blah, blah. Or I like this piece of this one a lot. And then obviously Jenica sent something out to all staff. And what's really interesting too is when we get to the strategic plan, is that going to have an influence on like what's the best fit as well? So there's lots of variables.
I would encourage you to stay flexible too, right? You have this vision statement, but if then the structures and strategies say, oh, maybe we should input this, then I would say do that. I actually am more drawn to 2, and it's because certain words pop out at me like meet and exceed. So not leaving anyone behind, but those that can exceed their potential, there's support for that. And I think like 1 is pretty wordy and it gets right. I think there's some things get lost in it, but I think if you could add to 2 something a little bit about the social emotional piece.
That's the feedback that's coming back on number 2.
That would kind of meet all, yeah.
Number 2 does a really good job of getting at the GT piece because it goes over that academic enrichment, right? So when you think about general intellect, math, things that students could
creativity, I love that.
leadership, they could qualify for, and creativity. So it kind of hits all of the GT components all in one. So that's why I kind of really like that. And saying specific curriculum is important as well.
Right.
So, and exceed
that one resonates
the standards. And then it goes with the critical thinking, problem solving, and transferable knowledge, which is college and career readiness, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm speaking out of turn, but I feel like that was the one the leadership team leaned towards as well. Was the second one.
And the others maybe have potential, but I think it's the way that it's specified. Yeah, some of that is really the piece I'm drawn to.
We'll see what staff says.
It'll be exciting.
Let's do it, staff does.
Yeah.
And Ben, what were your highlights on 3 again?
Well, I guess I like that it mentions, curriculum, because you can't critically think without knowledge. That's impossible. And so I'd be interested to hear what curriculum is being thought to be used in the gifted and talented program. And then, so it talks about, social and emotional skills. And then also it has somewhat of a direction, which is nice. And I guess the direction is to contribute to the community. So the other ones I don't think have that direction, at least.
Yeah. And the only like cautionary thing is if we get too specific, talking about like specific curriculum in a vision statement, then that really ties us to not being able to make some changes, but that could be flushed out within the plan. So that would be the only caution I would have on that. But I know what you're saying, as in we need something, right?
Yeah, no, I'm interested. I'm interested to hear what curriculum is going to be used for the gifted and talented program.
I also wonder, I just am now realizing sort of a lack of mention of like family or community. So maybe that's more appropriate for a mission statement in terms of how you incorporate, but possibly something else to think about in terms of like it's through staff and student and family community collaborate. I don't know.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, but exciting. I think Ben is excited for the nuts and bolts, as am I, but I like, I know this is that first step. So it's good to really.
We had a meeting this morning and our facilitator said, go slow to go fast. Sometimes it's like we have to, because we want to get there really fast.
Right.
Yeah, I met with Lalitha and myself, and our consultant met today for a couple of hours, just kind of sketching through, just working on criteria.
Mhm.
So it takes a little time for each little piece of that handbook is going to take a little time.
So what I've seen in other programs too is like there are enrichment opportunities, right, that are available to all, and then there's sort of a more specific program for the
GT.
learners who meet. That's still kind of okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Because if someone qualifies for GT, that's different than offering enrichment opportunities, for all, right? So it's like having an IEP for a special education student. There needs to be specific things put into place, certain criteria that needs to be met, progress monitoring that needs to happen. So there's kind of a couple different sides to it, right?
Yeah. Is the name of the program on the table? I know, like I've said, I've read across like gifted and talented, advanced learning. I don't know if there are other names, or is that something being discussed, or is that not? Okay, no.
Everything's on the table.
Okay.
Like talent development. I mean, there's, all different things.
Okay. And yeah, it's interesting. I'm sure there's lots of like scholarly debate about the names, but like clearly our current mission statement sort of exemplifies how gifted and talented can be taken like in a way that doesn't feel good, I feel like. So
Yeah, agree.
yeah. Okay.
All right, I will stop sharing then. I wrote all your feedback down and I will type that up and share that with our consultant. If you have anything extra or on the side that you would like to share, if you have access to that document, if you want to scratch it up and, email me, I'd be more than happy to share that too. Besides what I just gleaned from the conversation.
Okay.
Thank you so much for that. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Jenica.
You got it.
Okay, so 2C then?
Yes, the hot topic.
They're all hot topics. I love them all.
All right, so I did throw together a slideshow. It's not I didn't include it in the packet because it is literally, it's like a sloppy copy. It's just my rough thoughts. And the intent was to bring it to you guys, get additional feedback and additional questions so that I could like work through it and then bring it to the full board at the end of the month. So it is just kind of some of the pieces that were asked at the last board meeting and some brainstorming around that. Obviously nothing final. It's one of those things where you're not going to put an entire plan together if you don't know you have the time yet. So it's just kind of like a little bit of it is just tentative, but I'll go ahead and share what I have so far. All right. All right, so basically the goal is to be able to provide staff with professional development. We've talked a lot about, learning loss and the impact of the pandemic over the last several years. And when you look at the research, the biggest impact on student academic growth is highly trained teachers. So we've put a lot of expectations on staff the last couple of years. So this is an attempt to be able to support them through implementing some of these new things that we've been talking about this year. So we get to the end of the year, we've got a strategic plan. We've got here are all the areas that we want professional development around curriculum, around student mental health, around, gifted and talented or whatever we call it, around, writing good IEP goals and service delivery model for special ed. So there's a lot we're going to be asking staff to begin working on. So this is just an attempt to make sure that we've got that time and that continuous loop of feedback that we can provide for staff to get through all the work. So I started with just some of the positive impacts. Obviously, you guys know most of these, but I just wanted to, some of it was brainstorming for me. So like I said, we've got the special education audit. So we're talking about inclusive practices and responses to that. The talent development and the gifted and talented audit. One of the big things we've been talking about is making sure that instruction is aligned to the standards, making sure that staff know what their standards are, they know what the priority standards are, they know how to measure growth to those standards. So that's work that we want to make sure we're supporting. And some of it really is just that we've got, some staff that have been here for a really long time. We've got a lot of new staff. So making sure everybody knows how to use that curriculum and everybody knows how to, can be on the same page. Professional learning communities. Ben, you know about these, obviously giving staff time to work together as grade level or subject teams, to talk about the standards, talk about how they're going to measure progress, create rubrics, create common formative assessments, just so that we've got similar expectations across the board, so that we can do that vertically and across subject areas, so that when students are entering different grade levels or different classrooms, they know the expectations, they know how they're going to be measured. And so staff need time to work together to plan that and to go through their data together. Data-informed decision-making, equity work. We've talked a lot about the fact that there was this great foundation that was laid several years ago in training, but again, we have some staff who weren't here for it. We have some staff that, you know, at the time, right? We went through a pandemic. We've got a lot of other things that we've been dealing with. So how do we get back to that equity focus? Curriculum. So we're going through an ELA curriculum review this year, a PE one. Next year's math. So we're going to have additional things that we're going to be asking staff to implement as far as curriculum, and we want to make sure we can support that. Collaboration time. We have paraprofessionals that we feel like we really don't have adequate time to support because their hours are different. And generally, lots of times when the teachers are finding time to meet, to carve out during the day, the paras are then with the students. So there's not ever time for paras to meet with general ed teachers or special education teachers. We want our allied arts professionals to be involved in planning, and our student services staff, because if we're talking about mental health supports and trauma-informed care and all these other pieces, the staff have to have time to collaborate to implement those things. And then, sorry, I skipped and it just won't let me go back now. Jenica, you discovered that happened to you. So the pandemic has forced us to learn how to teach really differently. I've talked to a lot of people that talk about how the last several years has really felt like we're all new, which is in some ways refreshing because it's a level playing field. You know, as administrators, we've all had to figure this out together as teachers, but it's hard. It's really hard work. And so we want to give staff the time. I was thinking about, some structures that I've been a part of where you may have like one day a month. And I just kind of likened that to learning a skill. And you're going to be a lot more successful if you actually are practicing it for shorter amounts of time weekly or bi-weekly versus just trying to cram it all into one day once a month. So this is, like I said, super rough draft, just thinking. So right now I mapped out how much collaborative time and professional development time we had this year. So we had an extent, sorry. Oh, can you guys still see the screen?
Yep.
Okay, so we had an extended hours in September. We also had a professional development day in November, one full day. Then we had another 2 extended hours. We have a professional development day coming up in February, but that is not geared just for like our initiatives because it's one of the partner district days. So it's planned collaboratively with the other districts, which is great, but it's just not that same, half the day is partner school activities. We have another extended hours in March, a professional development day in April, and then another extended hours. And so the extended hours you can see also are 4:15 to 5:15 in the evening. So that's 19 hours of professional development time for teachers for the entire school year. The original proposal that I came to the board with a couple weeks ago was for a weekly 2-hour early release, which would be 58 hours. I left that board meeting really thinking about the impact for families. As a mom myself, and I did share this with you this week, Danielle, I was a bit shocked this week because I got an email from my kids' school that said, hey, for the rest of this school year, we're going to do an early release every other week. And it starts next week. So I was just like, okay, so recognizing that obviously that is something that families have to work through. Is there a way that we could still get that time with less of a burden on families? So I looked at the option of doing twice per month instead of every week, and we could still get 54 hours. So it would lessen the impact on families, but still have that nice amount of time to work with staff. I also thought about, dismissal and getting students out of the building with a 2-hour. And as I was brainstorming around how to lessen impact for families, it led me to a space of feeling that time would probably actually be more engaged time, with it being a 3-hour block every other week versus the shorter block once a week. So it was interesting as I came, like I was brainstorming for a different reason, but then started to feel that would actually be better. We've also got coaches. And so there's a real neat opportunity on those off weeks when the students don't have early release to have them follow up with staff in classrooms. So for example, if you're in a PLC and you're talking about character traits, and the 3rd grade team is meeting and students are all struggling on character traits. So they've got this early release time. They're developing some lessons that they're going to implement around character traits. They're talking about a rubric to measure that, and they're going to all implement it the next week. That next week, coaches could actually come into their classrooms and help support implementation of what they had planned during that early release. And then you've got the follow-up the next week. So it could be a really nice cycle of continuous feedback and support for staff. So it's not as if you go to a PD for a day, you learn a bunch of new stuff, and then for the next 3 months, you may or may not try it in your classroom, and nobody's going to be supporting you or helping you with that in your classroom.
Allison, when you say coaches, which staff who are you referring to?
Jenica, do you want to actually name the coaches, Jenica?
Or I'm just like the position. I'm just,
Sure.
Yeah, I can have Jenica fill
Also-
you in on that.
Are they also teachers?
We have a math coach interventionist. So she
Okay,
works partially with small group instruction and then also does coaching. We have one math interventionist coach at each building. We have 2 ELA interventionists / coaches at the elementary school. And then we have a 0.6 at the middle school.
okay. I thought you might have, I was just confirming it was the interventionist roles,
Yeah.
those big coaches.
Right, it's a split role.
Would you also possibly utilize like SST for some of that, right? Some of the other PD?
Yeah, that would be the other piece of it too.
Okay. 'Cause
Yep.
it's not like 4 people is not,
No.
Okay.
It would depend on what they're working on.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
for sure. And we
So,
really, when you
long-
think of, go ahead.
How long are they doing the intervention with students versus how long are they coaching?
Well, it depends on the person. I mean, I can break out their schedules. It depends on what groups, what the needs are based on the grades.
Oh, okay.
I'm not planning
mean,
that
it's-
yet then until they need approval, I think, to dive
And
in.
that changes every time we run through a
Right.
CST meeting, because some kids are dismissed, some kids might come in. We may not have this group anymore, so then that opens up more time for coaching.
Right.
So,
But they're coaching right now.
yep,
They're
Okay.
doing both. Yeah.
we're doing both. Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah,
But
and
yeah,
a
like-
lot of districts do a system similar to that. If you would like to learn more on talk to me on the side, I'd be happy to talk about that. So
And
yeah,
like Ben, like Jenica was saying, it depends on the data, right? So you do your screener, and then how many kids do you have that need intervention? How many groups? So then how much time's left in your day to do coaching?
right.
So it really just kind of depends.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
And then the other coaches would be our EL teacher and then also gifted and talented, right? Because we have to get in there and do some coaching of how do we extend our curriculum and provide, those extension opportunities, and then how do we support students, our English language learners, in the classroom as well. So we have some really good people in place to do some of this work.
Okay.
Allison, the typo I was pointing out then, so for the calendar that has the twice per month 3-hour early release, it says Parkway 12:45, Glen Hills 1:45, but that's the same as the other one. So I'm imagining it's
Oh, yeah. Yep. And I have it better in this slideshow.
11:45. Okay, all right, cool.
Sorry. Thank you
You
for
can-
letting me know that.
Go on. Sorry, I didn't.
No, thank you for letting me know that. So just talking about instruction, and I know this is Jenica's wheelhouse, but I get a little bit geeky excited about it too. And I talked about it a little bit earlier, but like making sure we're aligning instruction to the standards, giving them that time to function as grade level PLCs, the common assessments, measuring progress. I mean, this is how we're going to close those gaps. And this is how we're going to ensure that we have equitable practices, and we have, high leverage instruction, and that have high expectations. So that it's not objective, so that you know what you're measuring. Instructional practices aligned to strategic planning goals. So once we have our strategic plan and we've had each area, and there's going to obviously be a pillar that's curriculum and instruction. There's going to be a pillar that's social, emotional, and all of our SEL pieces. So then how do we implement that and give staff feedback and support? And then also just a note about the instructional piece. So like I said, they're working on that scheduling piece, and they're going to update the board at the end of the month in February. So if this were to be approved, we would obviously include those early release days in how it would impact that schedule at Glen Hills and at Parkway, but more specifically at Glen Hills, like to what you were speaking to, Ben, last month, to make sure that if we compact the day, we're protecting the time for core academics, so that we're not missing a bunch of minutes for literacy and math, which I know you mentioned.
How many minutes?
We would have to really, they're working on the schedule right now, so it's a little bit preliminary but it would be twice a month instead of 3 times, and it would most likely, and actually let me kind of
but you said twice a month instead of 3 times a month, but
instead of every week. So twice a
that's
month.
only 6 hours.
Yeah, 6 hours a month.
So the same amount of instructional time would be.
No, 54 hours, she said, right, would be.
And actually, if I look at the next slide, Ben, it would be a little different, because with a 3 hour, you wouldn't have a lunch and recess.
Oh, okay.
Versus with a 2 hour, so that saves more time for core academics.
Okay.
But we did talk about ensuring students would have, like if they wanted to take a lunch, like a bag lunch, we would still provide that for students that needed it. But that would save more academic minutes, because you wouldn't have lunch and recess time during the day.
Okay.
So this is really rough because obviously we're still working on the schedule. We're still talking about busing. We're still talking about end times. Like there's a lot of variables still, but if we were just basing it on what we're doing right now, the Glen Hills Day, and I had to like move the teacher day a little bit just so that it's equitable, because they start 45 minutes before students, and Parkway staff starts a half hour before students. But basically, you would have Glen Hills dismissing at 12:45. So you'd have a nice block from like 1 to 4:15 for that PD. And then Parkway would be the 11:45. So you're right, it wasn't, I have to fix that on the calendar, which would give you that 12 to 3:15. And then what's really exciting is that you could actually do vertical. You could bring all your special ed teachers together, K4 through 8, or you could bring all your allied arts, or you could work on ELA one week, because you would have between 1 and 3:15 common between the two schools, which is, something we don't have at all right now. So that's kind of an exciting. And then I did also talk to, I've been in constant conversation with K4. It's kind of funny because I met with the team and asked them about like the first one and so we had a whole conversation about that. And then I went back to him and I was like, hey, I think this would actually be better. So the feedback I got from K4 is that when they did a once a month early release and it was a 3 hour, K4 did not have school on that day. So that would be their recommendation if we go to the 3 hour twice a month. Knowing that they have twice as many students, they already have less planning time than other grade levels. So they said they would be very happy to have that extra planning time on those days if students weren't in session those 2 days a month. So they could work on curriculum. They talked about working with their paraprofessionals to turn over centers, to do planning. So that was the K4 perspective on those days. And then obviously they'd be involved with all the other staff during the 3 hours and 15 minutes at the end of the day. Some of the options that we're exploring for families, we talked to Milestones Daycare. They do provide a similar service in Shorewood. Shorewood does a weekly early release, and they provide, they have extra staffing on those Wednesdays. It happens to be Wednesdays in Shorewood too. But they said not a lot of extra students take advantage, but they do have the capacity if we did have that. Still working with Lindsay, and if this is were something to be approved, we would talk about how we could possibly help support cost for families. We don't know what the prices are. We're still reaching out, and they said their prices might change next year, but definitely with an eye on ensuring that that would not be a barrier for families. And then I've also talked with Nicolay Rec, who would be able to provide programming at Parkway and Glen Hills from like 12:45 to the regular dismissal time at Glen Hills, and from 11:45 to the regular dismissal time at Parkway. And I was gonna actually, let me stop sharing really quick because I have an email from Nate that he just kind of, if you're interested, he gave me some of the options for some of the programming they could offer. So I could share that with you too.
This programming would be at both schools, right? They would
Yes.
come to schools. And it
So,
would-
yep. So he said, they do Computer Explorers Legos at Parkway, Young Rembrandts, Parkway and Glen Hills, Mad Science, Parkway and Glen Hills, Chess, Parkway and Glen Hills, Spanish as a possibility, at either or both of the schools. And that if this were approved, then we would do some more planning, they'd finalize it, and then they'd put it in their 2022 fall bulletin, so that families would have that mid-August.
Sorry, were any of those like physically, like physical activity? I mean, you read them off kind of fast.
No, actually, but that's something I could talk to him about. Yeah, it was
There might
computer.
be some interest in just like kids who just want to move, you know, it could be a
Yeah.
good outlet for.
And I did
My
mention to him that they would want to have like a lunch and maybe a recess break, right? Before they would go into a program. So yeah, definitely need to move.
You're similarly looking into that being some kind of low cost to no cost option for families on those
Yeah,
days?
we'd work with Nicolay on that.
I know it's in a couple weeks you'd be presenting this to the board, but if we had some idea of like, if there was no low cost or free option, some idea of what costs might be for families on these
Sure.
things, I feel like that would be a
Sure.
good piece of information.
Absolutely.
Okay. Is there more in your presentation? Because I just had a comment.
No.
Okay. I wanted to say, so what really struck me when I did get to speak to you about this was talking about our current state of PD, right? And the limited hours that teachers have. And it clicked. I wanted to understand what the current system was to understand why we need this other system so badly. And it all clicked for me that there's really no way that we can implement the values that we espouse as a community around equity and around special education and mental health and trauma-informed care without this time for teachers to collaborate. And when I asked how we used to do it, you told me it was usually through subs, and we just don't have that option now. So the teachers have just not been getting this time and space, and this just to me seems like it could be a really important change and something we could offer, and that it will have a positive impact for everybody. One second, my love. So it was good to understand that piece of it, and I'm glad that we're looking into how we can support families for something that would be, a big change like this. And then my last little piece that I said too, but I'm going to say again, is that as we're looking at how we support teachers, I still want to push you guys to think about mental health days sort of generally, because what we're giving to teachers through this would be time and space to plan and collaborate. But we know there's a burnout. We know folks are leaving the profession. It just seems like another, whether those are half days or full days, asynchronous learning, whatever it is, I just implore you guys to keep thinking about that for the next year or years to come, because what do we do without teachers? I don't know. I mean, what are we don't have subs. What do we do when we don't have teachers? So it seems like, we may be asking a lot of families or students to do some of this learning on their own on asynchronous days, but the alternative, I don't want to think about the alternatives in a way. So thank you for doing some of this extra homework to help us make an informed choice.
No, I appreciate your feedback too.
Okay, so, and I see Justin's hand up, so I'll call on him in a minute. So I guess I still come from the side that this is a lot of instructional time that's being lost. And again, it would be hard if I lost that much instructional time getting through the curriculum. And so I do like that you brought up that, yeah, okay, so is it better to do it 4 times a month or 1 time a month? Yeah, okay, so if you practice 4 times a month, that's going to be a lot better. But on the first slide, it seemed like there's a lot of focus on like a lot of things, right? So if we're going to do this, maybe focus on 2 things that are really going to improve student outcomes. And then maybe that's beneficial, because I don't think there's evidence that says that like more meetings and less student time in the classroom would result in better student outcomes. But if it's a focus on 2 things and you get really good at those 2 things, it's possible, right? Like direct instruction and clarity of instruction. Those are 2 things that have a huge impact on student outcomes. So like one thing some of the math teachers and I do, and we've done this before, we've had lively debates about how best to teach factoring. Okay. And sometimes it gets heated, but that helps us because we're actually talking about how to best instruct. So if there's like a list of, I don't know, was it like 10 things? That's a lot.
I can speak to that. So I wanted to throw out everything that we've said to this year, our priorities. We would obviously take our strategic plan and create a really specific professional development plan. Like that's something that Jenica's already talking about, because you're right, we can't do a million things well. What I wanted to illustrate is these are all the things we're asking with no time. You know what I mean? So yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So if we were to move forward this model, the next step would then be creating that professional development plan.
Yeah. And sorry, I don't know if other teachers feel the same way I do, but I shudder at the thought of
absolutely
losing class time. So it would.
And doing a lot of reading, I did a lot of reading on the pandemic, because some of the feedback that I got from families was around, we've already lost all this time in classrooms. I don't want to lose more. But everything that I read said that the only way we're going to close those gaps for kids is if we have highly trained teachers in every classroom. And how do we make sure our teachers are highly trained? By giving them time and support and professional development and learning. We need it as administrators. One of the things that we're really excited about as an admin team is there's a training we're signing up for around continuous improvement process and being a strong team and having how do we support our strategic plan? Like we have to continue learning in order to like meet the challenges that we have right now with kids. So I hear you. I would just say, I can keep running like okay every day, or I can like get into a training program and be a really strong runner, right? And it's going to take some time away from other stuff, but then I'm going to be more impactful.
Right. And is it possible to hear what teachers think about this? Could we have have them tell us?
Yeah. So
could I talk to Mike?
So we had a preliminary conversation with Mike and Tim. And so basically that's some of the work that we want to bring to like continuing that conversation and bringing it to the next meeting. Yeah.
So, okay. So they can talk at the next meeting about it?
Or I can gather their feedback. But yes, I meet with the association. So we've been very open and had conversations about it. Yeah.
All right. Is that everything?
Yeah, well, Ben, you made some good points, I think, and I'm glad you made them. So I feel like, should this be approved? Some of that like follow-up is like, if you have 54 hours, right? Like it would be good to understand then how those 54 hours are going to be used. And so we have points to check in on and say, did we accomplish what we thought we would accomplish in this model, right? So I feel like that would be good accountability for everybody, and just to all keep talking about it.
Yeah. And I don't want to sound harsh. I just like, it's just like one of those things where I can relate to losing time.
No, absolutely. And Jenica and I have talked about, the strategic plan is including that progress monitoring, right, Danielle? So like, if we say this is a strategy in order to impact student achievement, we have to check in on it to make sure that it's working. Yeah.
All right. So should I call in Justin or any?
No, visitor participation.
Okay. Yep. All right. So Hi, Justin.
Hello, thank you for allowing me to speak.
So do we have to do name and
Name
address?
and address,
Sure.
please.
Okay.
Justin Rodriguez, 5742 North Sunset Lane. And I think that the current revised 2 calendar is going in the opposite direction. We should be adding more instructional time for our students and not taking instructional time away. It's not really clear how much instructional time that they are getting in terms of minutes or hours for 21-22 versus the proposed calendar for 22-23. So I think when it's presented to policymakers like yourself, Ben, to Danielle, there needs to be a clear kind of idea of what are we at now? What are we going to be at with the proposed calendar? In addition, what were we at pre-pandemic? That last year we had before the pandemic, how much total instructional time do we have? And I think we should be going the opposite direction in terms of instructional time. I appreciate the need for professional development. I don't think it should be coming at the cost to students. And that's where I just struggle, because we've seen the impact that it's had on our kids being away from school. And I just think that we're kind of going in the opposite direction. So I appreciate the changes from revision 1 to revision 2. And I also just wanted to, excuse me, I just wanted to mention that some other comparisons we should look at is these other students that our students from Glen Hills will be going to school with at Nicolet. How much instructional time do they get versus our kids? I just want to make sure that, you know, we're looking at this equitably between our districts, because they may have more home financial resources. And I don't think that we should be having less instructional time than them. So I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you all. And that's all I had to say.
Thanks, Justin.
All right, thank you. Okay, Melissa.
For some reason, I can't start my video, but hello, my name is Melissa, and I live at 6563 North River Road, Glendale, Wisconsin, clearly. I was looking through the previous agendas, and this kind of has to do with some of your agenda items for tonight, but something that has been on my mind. And the curriculum review was listed in August for August 5th. So I was just hoping if there can be some transparency and an update around the curriculum review for ELA that's happening this year. And also if there has been any decisions. I know that Parkway's using units of study, but in October, an ed report came out that said it does not meet standards at all for text quality, complexity, alignment to standards with tasks and questions grounded in evidence. So I think when we're thinking about gifted and talented programming, but then also we're not providing or utilizing a curriculum that meets standards in complexity and alignment to standards, those things are a little contradictory to me. And I just want to make sure that the curriculum we're using is being reviewed and is an equitable opportunity for all students, whether they're in gifted and talented or not. So I guess I don't know where we are in the curriculum review for ELA, but I just wanted to bring that up.
All right, thanks.
I can give just a quick 1-2 on that. We are going to be having our second ELA curriculum review meeting on February 20, or no, tomorrow. So that's going to be our second meeting. We had one canceled due to a power outage. So we are only heading into our second meeting for that. And then we also meet with all the partner districts. So Mapledale, Indian Hill, Nicolet, Fox Point Bayside, and the Glendale-River Hills School District all work together on the curriculum review. So as soon as we dig into it a little more, then I'll be sharing out more information. And then there'll be, of course, a board report and all of that when we're finished with it.
Possibly March or April after you've met, you might have some info for curriculum. Maybe.
Possibly.
And I do appreciate that. I just think that we really need to look at the diversity that lies within our district as compared to, say, Fox Point Bayside, where my husband teaches, and what the curriculum has to offer for students. I mean, I think the research is saying that units of study does not provide, equitable opportunity for students that don't necessarily come to school ready to learn. And we just have a more diverse student body than what my husband, for example, is experiencing. So although I appreciate that we're partnering with high performing districts, I also think that our previous school report cards are just showing that our scores are not going up. And I'm just concerned about the curricular choice for Glendale. So that's all. Thank you.
Thanks, Melissa.
Thank you for the
Okay.
feedback. I appreciate it from both comments. Thank you.
Just real quick, one last thing on early release. What is the feedback that you get from like Shorewood, or is it Elmbrook or Menominee Falls? I imagine you've had conversations with sort of how early release is, or if you have, I don't know. What kind of feedback do you hear from these districts that are doing it?
I don't know if Jenica has more specific feedback. Most of the feedback I get is around the opportunity to really function as a true PLC and to be able to, I laughed at Ben's comment about them having these debates about how to teach certain things, but sometimes that's where the power is in a team being able to really talk about what they're teaching, how they're measuring that, products that their students are giving them in their classroom. So that's the feedback I've heard most, is around that time to function as a PLC. Look at our data together, make decisions together, plan together, and like have really thoughtful conversations, because it's not on the fly when you're walking past your colleague's classroom. You know what I mean? In like 30 seconds, like you can really actually do some deep work together.
Yeah. Just to Justin's point about minutes, I think if we do have specifics, it would be good to be able to discuss those in terms of what minutes look like before, what they're going to look like under this proposal.
Definitely click that note. Yep.
Okay. And I imagine that the teachers or Mike are speaking to the union may be able to speak to some of this, this idea of learning loss and minutes in the classroom. I appreciate that. I just wonder sometimes about the quality of those minutes and whether having more minutes that are not quality minutes, right? Maybe like that's the consideration I'm having. I think, Ben, you're talking about that a little bit too, because I think you have concerns that maybe you wouldn't be able to get the quality or quantity, right? So I just feel like that's a valid discussion. And so I feel like having folks to speak to that and have that discussion again makes sense. This is it's a big deal, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's all I got.
I'm just taking notes.
I think then we should officially open up visitor participation and then see if anybody else would like to say something. I take that as a no. So I guess, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, and we are adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for the really good conversation.
Yeah. Have a good night.
Let's see you.